Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mark Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 62. We are diversifying our portfolio this episode.
Well, I guess we kind of have with some of our hiking adjacent stuff, but yeah, this is probably as far off from it as we've gone.
Yeah, so this is not just us going to be talking about the Munda Biddi and having people in and whatnot. This is actually Donovan has started riding the Munda Biddi and is aiming to complete his sectional end-to-end this year.
Yeah, so people who read The Long Ways Better may have noticed there's been a bit of radio silence, and this is why. So I've not really talked about it, but in August there will be the blog post will be released. This is the first time I've really talked about it in a more public fashion.
Because you even surprised us with this, because we've got our little hiking chat group.
Yep.
And like you'd mentioned that you were going to do some of the Munda Biddi, but I just thought that was looking for different stuff to do as like on a day hike kind of thing. But you'd actually started your end-to-end well before you then announced what you were going to do.
So it did start as a conversation, like, you know, what I said was true. I was just looking for something else to do. Basically, because my plans for the year were scuttled by COVID-19. So, I mean, I'll say very much that this is a first world problem, because we've managed to, not even a first world problem, because the US is the first world and they have not.
Or are they really?
But, like, we're one of the few places in the world that are really lucky in terms of how we've dealt with the virus and the pandemic. So I'm, fully aware of the fact that there are more things to worry about than your holiday plans being scuttled. But my plans were scuttled for the year, and our plans included going up to Ningaloo to see the whale sharks over Easter. We were going to go to the Great Barrier Reef and do the Thorsby Trail, and possibly we're going to go to Hawaii. So it was a very tropical year. And I just thought, well, if we're stuck in Western Australia, what can I do? And we had a chat about this, about like what hiking trails are left to do. Yeah. And there's not a lot of quality ones left to do.
No, especially with the way they closed the borders off, is pretty much east of the hills was a no-go.
Yeah.
Where most of like the really good like autumn hiking was. I know, because I mean, we were both getting a little bit despondent about what was out there, and I kind of stopped hiking for a while, but you were really annoyed because you had concrete plans that really got affected, whereas I didn't have too many of those. And I was re-listening to the 2019 in review podcast, and we were talking about our 2020 plans, and you were so enthusiastic. I'm just like, oh God. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all right. So I think I was really deflated for a long time, as you would have known, because I was complaining almost daily about, the situation. Not, and I must say that I was very supportive of what McGowan's has done and is continuing to do. But, it was like, what am I going to do this year? And then it occurred to me that I was only thinking hiking, and that there was this huge project that I could undertake this year. And in fact, that the entire track from Mundaring through to just south of Dwellingup was within Perth and Peel. So that was like 7 trips or 6 trips. And I thought, well, this is something I could tackle this year. And so that's how I'm doing an end-to-end of the Munda Biddi.
Yeah, because when you mentioned I got a world exclusive to read your first 3 posts today. And you mentioned in there that, like, before you started hiking seriously for the Long Ways Better, like, you used to go mountain biking, and I was the same as well. I'd go out every now and then, and that kind of got scrapped when all this became pretty serious, and now you can kind of get back into it. Yeah. So it's not like you're a complete novice at this. It's just literally getting back onto the bike.
Yeah, because it's that, even though hiking, I've got very strong legs from hiking, but it uses a different set of muscles and a different, skill set. And I had lost that from, I used to cycle every night. I used to go cycle down the river and come back. And then when that, that stopped, I lost that. And then it just felt so frustrating hopping back on a bike when the restrictions came in and I was just riding around the river again, I just suddenly felt it had all come back together, and I went, oh, this is good. I need to, make the most of this.
Yeah. Because I've just recently got on my bike as well, sort of semi-inspired by your efforts on my road bike, not my mountain bike. And it's just something like, you just get to see a lot more scenery when you're on a bike. And I've always thought, like, if you're a visitor to Perth, hiring a bike and riding around the river and Kings Park and everything is the best way to see it.
Yeah.
And we'll go into this a little bit more as the post goes on, that certain types of forest you enjoy more when you're going a little bit faster.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so we may as well get stuck into it. We're going to do this sequentially like we did with the bib.
Yep.
So we are starting off with map 1, which is Mundaring to Jarrahdale.
Yes.
So a little bit different start compared to the Bibbulmun, but a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess the first bit of it, I feel is very similar to that first day of the Bibbulmun from Kalamunda, in that you start at a high point and you immediately plunge down. And so I think this is a nice sort of warm up for the track, because you start at a high point and then you follow what was originally the Katamordo Heritage Trail, which you've done. And is also now part of the Kep track and the Munda Biddi, so you get 3 trails for the price of 1 here. Going down the hill to the Mundaring will be a hotel. And so that's starting from the sculpture park in Mundaring, and it's just downhill all the way, basically. So it's a pretty nice, easygoing ride.
Yeah, kind of lulls you into a false sense of security.
Yeah, I mean, you've walked this bit.
Yeah, so I think I've walked the first maybe 15 or 20 Ks of the Munda Biddi. So yeah, it's a lot different on a bike, obviously, but yeah, walking it seems like a nice trail. It's fairly wide and accessible. And yeah, delving down into that beautiful valley where Mundaring Weir is.
Yep. And you passed the Bibbulmun at this point, and I think I wrote about it. You would have read what I said about that, and it was a weird thing, because I think from from discussions that we've had, that I've had a bit of mixed feelings about the Bibbulmun after finishing it. Like I wrote in the blog post that I fell out of love with the Bibbulmun track, and seeing it there, like I actually got really teary when I saw it. And it was because I realized, like, when I was there, when I did the bib, it was before Marin Road and before all the trauma of constantly burnt forest. And I was reminded about what I really loved about the bib when I started, and it was that sense of newness, and the sense of discovery and adventure. And I realized, certainly from doing the bib, that that's something that really is an important part of my hiking practice, is that I do need to have that sense of newness to it. Otherwise, I get pretty bored. I'm certainly not someone who can, walk a trail again and again and again. Yeah, so this felt, it was nice to feel nice about the bib, and to come to grips with that feeling, because I think I felt so frustrated about it for a long time, and it was nice that the Munda Biddi got me to feel good about it.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from, because it's that whole, you get excited, you plan. You can look at as many photos as you want of that someone else has taken and written about it, but it's still that, like, what's going to be out there? What am I going to see? And especially with, like, the long distance trails, where it will cover separate bits of the state that you've never seen before, and it could be bad, it could be good, but you don't know what's going to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just out of interest, when was the last time you hiked a section of the bib?
Not that long ago. I mean, I've done a Monadnock section before they burnt it recently, because I think I may have done Mount Cook over summer, like from the plantation up.
Yeah. Oh, and training for New Zealand? Is that it?
It would have been in training before New Zealand, yeah. I think I might have done it when I came back, just out of, like, just really wanting to do something. But that would have been, other than Monadnocks and Mount Cook, probably not done a section in a long time.
No. We'll get back to the Munda Biddi.
Yeah.
So joining the bib, it kind of passes Mundaring Weir Hotel, but then you get shoved onto Mundaring Weir Road, which is, you're not an experienced road cycler. It can be a bit unnerving if there's a bit of traffic there.
Yeah, so I think it was a good in a way that there were COVID restrictions because there was not a lot of people out and about. But I overshot the...
Yeah, I saw that.
Because it's very easy to overshoot it. And I went up and went, oh, this doesn't seem right. Turned around, and yeah, sure enough, there it was. And it made sense because it went along the Helena River. Something, though, I will say that I picked up very early on, which was cycling from Mundaring down to the Weir, was that Jarrah, in its stunted, burnt, scrappy form, is much less objectionable on a bike. Because I think I struggle to see the forest from the hideous trees, but at the speed of a bike, it's easy to let it just wash over you. And so I actually found that I enjoyed Jarrah Forest.
Whoa, is this the start of a public apology to all Jarrah forests everywhere?
Not all Jarrah forests, as you'll see. But I've come to actually like Jarrah Forest a lot more.
Okay. I should point out we are drinking, but we've only just started.
And there's actually some really nice Jarrah Forest in this map section, and even better in some of the later sections, but I digress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So along the Helena River, it's actually really nice. I was surprised when I did this as part of the Golden Helena Valley something that I did up, that it's not just 4x4 track. It goes off into it's like on single trail. You get to see the river a fair bit. It's really beautiful section. I
think they've made the most of it because the cheap way out would have just gone, oh, we'll just follow the pipeline. And yes, you do follow the pipeline a bit, but it also just takes you down on single track past like beautiful granite boulders and then back onto the main road and then back down. And it's, just really nice scenery. And then once it crosses the Helena Valley onto the other side, it goes up very steeply. And at this point, this is my first day of the track, and I was thinking, gee, what have I gotten myself into? This seems, really, this is out of my league. So I pushed the bike up, but then I also had a chain slip at that point as well, and my gears weren't working properly. But what made it really enjoyable, though, was the Wandoo through here. And it's like old growth Wandoo, massive Wandoo. So I was really happy. It's one of my favorite trees. Yeah. So, I was having a good time in spite of the quite challenging terrain.
Yeah, it's a beautiful section. And like when I was walking it, all I could think of is Don would love this.
And you are correct.
Yeah.
I did.
And also around that area, if I'm correct, there's a touring route and then the regular route that you can take. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think that they're going to get rid of it, the touring route, but yes, there is a split there. But what has happened is that they're actually going to do some work to make the trail a bit easier through here, because I think they've recognized that this is the first bit that a lot of people do, and it's just dispiriting to have this challenge straight away. So and the issue is that the touring route kicks in once the worst of the climb is over.
Yeah.
So I think with the work that they're doing, it sort of negates the need for the touring route. And I decided that I was not going to take the touring route anyway. I was going to take the main trail. And I was happy with my decision. It was quite nice going through the areas there. So it links up with the Kalamunda circuit and links up with the Bibbulmun track. And a lot of people recognize it for that bit where it goes past the granite flat area.
Yeah. And there's like a million trail markers for every single trail that intersects.
That's right, yeah. Because there's like some of the old trails that used to go through there as well.
Yeah.
So it follows the Kalamunda circuit up to the Dell, which is a very popular mountain bike area.
And then from there, it's a lot more uphill as well, because you've got Mount Gungeon.
That's right,
to try and get, which I think is the highest point in like the actual hills bit where all the suburbs are.
Yeah. So that's, it's a bit of a push up there. It's a very slow up, and it goes for a while. And you have to be careful because you're, slowly going up while there's all these mountain bike tracks that are crossing.
Yeah. It's quite dangerous. I'm surprised they don't have like the stop signs like they do later on.
Yeah.
Because because you'd assume the Munda Biddi cyclists would get the stop sign, not the downhillers.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. I think they actually have a sign to say to give way to people on the track, the Munda Biddi, not the mountain bikers. And I stopped a few times to let the mountain bikers go through because that's just an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, they can't stop as quickly as what you would.
That's right. So, yeah, and this was, it was a bit of a struggle going up the hill, but I got there, and then it's nice and downhill to near the Perth Observatory. So there's some nice sort of single track there. It's nice and flowy and goes down to the junction there, and that's where Alyssa picked me up because I didn't want to do the full 40 Ks to start with. And I had a good taste for it and really enjoyed it, and so much so that I said to Alyssa, can I come back on Monday? So this was Anzac Day, and I had the Monday off, and so went back and did the next section, which went from there to Brookton Highway via the next campsite. So this bit was really nice. Like it went through a lot of like Jarrah Forest and apple orchards, and like how I always joke about Korong National Park and say like, how is this a national park? Like, it's just so crap. And Channel 10 Tower Walk is in that national park, so
the Carmel Walk, which you didn't really enjoy.
No. So a lot of walks I haven't enjoyed, but I had to eat humble pie because there is a section which has all these really tall Jarrah, and it's downhill through the forest and it winds through, and it's awesome. So yeah, I actually liked a bit of Korong National Park.
Yeah, when I read that I was like really? There's that good quality forest in Korong National Park? Because why is there not a walk trail? I know there's a mountain bike trail through there, but why put the Carmel Walk where it is when you could probably make a better walk trail up where the Munda Biddi goes? A bit weird, that one. Yeah,
I feel like there's a sense of and this is something we'll talk about in another episode sometime in the future, but I feel like there's a sense that as hikers we're made to just accept what we're given, and we're made to think that the Jarrah forest that you see that is a bit crappy and scrappy is perfectly beautiful and fine. And yes, I have probably softened my feelings about Jarrah significantly, but I still will not accept low quality Jarrah forest as being just as good as old growth. That's not the same thing.
Because it's really striking when you come across old growth Jarrah and you're like, oh wow, they branch out at the top and there's a canopy and it can actually look really nice. Whereas most of what we get is regrowth forest. And as I was getting towards the end of the Billman, I just reflected back thinking, hang on, most of what we walk through is regrowth. There's very little old growth or significantly older trees just around. So it really does hit you when you come into a nice patch like you did. As
you're saying, sometimes even if it was planted in 1920, at least that's 100 years old and it looks nice. So in Dwelling Up, you've got that. But then a lot of the other stuff, it looks like it's only maybe 30 or 40 years old. And very burnt.
And is still probably logged to this day. So from Coorong, there's a bit of road cycling mixed in there.
Yeah, so you go past an orchard and you have to go up this hill, and it's 3 Ks on the road. And this is, again, I think something that I found quite different. If that was on foot, I would have really hated it, because that's almost an hour. Whereas on a bike...
At your speed, 5-10 minutes?
It wasn't that long. It was certainly not, I'd say it'd probably be 45 minutes on foot if you were with a backpack and stuff. Whereas on a bike, it was, very much shorter and didn't feel as horrible. But then, from there you pass through more of Korong, and then you end up in the Dale Road area.
Because as you said in your post, it's familiar to hikers because that's your access point to Mount Dale. But for the Munda Biddi riders, it is home and you get to cycle through that forest. What's that area like? Is it different as you're driving in, or is it much the same of kind of so Jarrah.
Yeah, it's so. I think though, surprisingly, the campsite's only about 2 km from Dale Road, down the track, and Carina is actually a really nice spot. I think that they've picked a good spot. It has a lot of she oak around there, and it's really nicely laid out. Quite open space in front of the hut, and I know you agree with me that the Munda Biddi huts are better than the Bibbulmun huts.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about them now. It's just, I think it benefits from being a much newer track, and the fact that the materials that they use, they've put a bit of thought into the design well before they're all put in, whereas the Bibbulmun, it was, we're going to open this up. Like before, the Bibbulmun was just like water tanks and you tented.
Yep.
And then they started to bring in the shelters, and they were built by prisoners, and it was kind of like a progression that they then stopped and said, we're just going to use this design from now on. Whereas the Munda Biddi being much newer, it's more thought out. You've got that kind of top bit of the roof that then sticks out, and then you've got the two bottom sections of the roof, and there's 2 sleeping areas that are all enclosed. You got little bike shelters. I actually really enjoy them. I mean, so much so that DBCA have started using them like on the Hakea Trail. It's a good design. Yeah.
I think that really is a sign that it's a design that's probably more, well, first of all, it's more sustainable because it will largely survive a fire, at least the frame will. And also it's just they came up with a really good design idea there. And I think that if we did more multi-days that had some kind of shelter design, we'd probably see more of these than a Bibbulmun one. Particularly, I don't think we'll ever see a wooden structure ever again.
Yeah. And how often do they get used?
I think a lot less than the Bibbulmun.
Yeah.
I think that this one is really popular with bogans because it's easy to get to. I've read like a few blog posts that people have had encounters with some locals pulling up and having parties there. The gate into there, it's only a short walk, but the gate someone had like bulldozed the tree to the left of it so they could go around, and it's just like, first of all, it's amazingly ironic because the effort to get there by foot isn't that difficult. And yet they went to all the effort of pulling out a tree just so that they could lazily drive right up to the hut.
Yeah, but you've got to understand that they've probably got like 2 cartons worth of Emu exports. Probably like a huge. They probably wouldn't bring their own firewood. They'd just chop down a tree and burn it. But yeah,
and that's actually a good point. The Munda Biddi is completely no fires.
Okay.
There's no fire pits.
Yeah, I kind of understand, but then not really, because like the DBCA like car camping spots, most of them have campfires there.
Yeah.
So that's an odd choice that they've made there, because it's a good way to like get to know your fellow riders or hikers or whatever. It's hanging around the campsite, around the campfire, having a chat.
I think that they make opportunities elsewhere because there's bench seating. There's a lot more seating areas undercover.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that encourages people to hang out and chat, and particularly later on in the track where there's the ones with the balconies. I think that they're really great meeting places for people. But maybe that doesn't help if you're cold.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, it's great to chat, but if you're freezing cold because there's no source of warmth, maybe just go to bed early.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's day one.
Day one, Carina campsite, and then you finished off at Brookton Highway, which isn't too far away from Carina, is it?
Yeah, so it's basically just downhill all the way, which was good fun. The only thing I'll say is that you have to pick the weather, because if it had rained just 2 days before, so it was nice and firm. But I have seen photos of people just having like loose gravel through here, and you can barely control it. Someone said it's like riding on ball bearings, and given I've crashed twice, I'll say yes.
Yeah, because it is that kind of surface that like if you sink into it, it just kind of like folds over your wheel.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really hard to try and get going.
Yeah.
So Brookton Highway onwards, this one's kind of a bit weird because it has to skirt a water catchment area.
Yep.
And it wasn't one of your most favourite
Nope.
sections.
So the problem with it is that it's challenging because it's up and down. It's constantly undulating through here. And also the forest is very much regrowth. And also it's very much been burnt recently. And also very popular with dirt bike riders. When Alyssa dropped me off at Brookton Highway, she saw 50 dirt bikes turn onto the Munda Biddi. And thankfully they didn't follow it all the way because they didn't pass me. But yeah, they went down on the Munda Biddi.
Yeah.
And ripping through the valley.
Well, they're on bikes. They're allowed to. That's the same thing.
There's very specifically pictures saying no dirt bikes. Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't too bad though, because you have photos of some nice granite boulders that you could see and a few platforms here and there.
Yeah, I think there's certainly things here. I feel like this area, there's probably more opportunity for... I think if the trail could go to these things a bit more, because like you can just off the track, you can see massive granite boulders and slabs that are sort of like Abyssinia rock style. And in fact, it goes past that one near the road, that one that you were talking about.
Yeah, Boulder Rock.
Yeah. So it's only like 500 meters from Boulder Rock, but doesn't actually go to Boulder Rock, which I think is weird, because even if they marked it as a side trip, I would have probably seen that as worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I think more could be done through here. I understand the limitations because they've got a water catchment on one side and then they've got the disease risk area on the other. And clearly they've just gone, well, bikes shouldn't go into the catchment area and shouldn't go into the disease risk area. This is where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it just is up and down through burnt, scrappy Jarrah. And to make matters worse, I forgot my helmet.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when I read that, I was like, how did you get, was it like half an hour in and you realised you'd forgotten your helmet?
Yeah, I realized as the wind blew through my hair. It was because it was the first time I'd had my top tube bag on a bike. So I had that, and I think I had a few other bits and bobs that I'd had to put together. And I'd just been used to like hop on the bike, put the helmet on, and that was the ritual of getting ready.
Yeah.
But this was like starting to gear up for doing this seriously. And so I just completely lost track of the helmet. And of course, Alyssa had driven away, so there's no point in riding back.
Yeah.
So I just had to press on and just...
Hope you didn't crash.
Yeah. So every time there was loose, gravelly sections, I took it very easy. And there's this one bit where it just careens down the hill, and it's just got washed away erosion all the way through it. And I had to just be careful going down there, because that would have been a probably pretty deadly to fly, you know, over the handlebars for.
I won't say it's ironic if you had have fallen off and hit your head on a Jarrah tree, but let's leave that out there. Yeah. So leaving the scrappy area, you get into like the Mondaring conservation area, just north of Albany Highway, and so that's a lot better.
Yeah, so it crosses over. It goes on to Kinsella Road, and then follows that for a little bit. But then it does this weird thing where it turns back west towards the pine plantation, and then follows close to the road. And I get what they were doing in a sense, because they were trying to take it off Kinsella Road, so you're not just on Kinsella Road for ages.
Yeah. But
really, the only thing of value here was that I passed a spectacular car wreck where Bogans had taken a shotty to it and just shot. There's just like all these shotgun shells everywhere around the car. Masterpiece. But that was basically the main like draw of this loop that I did. Yeah. But then it goes to the Glen Eagle picnic area, and that was that was like probably a big change. And there was also some nice bits of she oak, I guess, when it went into Monadnocks. I've discovered that she oak is the cyclist's friend. Just makes a lovely bed to
like
cycle
a very
on.
soft mattress.
Yeah. It was nice getting that change, then coming to Glen Eagle, which of course is famous for being both an old town site, It's one that you drive past a lot on Albany Highway. Also, where the Morehouse murders were buried. So there's a bit of infamy there. So
because nice pine plantation through there, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of pine plantation. Some, those nice granite boulders behind there. But yes, pine plantation.
Yeah, because I was in Dwelling up on the weekend, and I was just driving past a really thick pine plantation. I was like, it's so dark. 5 meters in, perfect place to bury your bodies. Not that I have any to bury, but I was like, why not? Who's going to find them until they harvest?
Exactly. So I think that was the reason for that place.
Yeah.
But yeah, for people who are true crime fans, there's also a little bit of connection there, a bit of interest. So I certainly found that interesting to go through that area, see both an old town site that is no longer, and also to think about this as a place where murders happened, or at least bodies were buried.
Yeah, because Perth doesn't really have too much of that. Like, if you were just there, it's just a place that you go. You don't really think that bad stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Because it happens so rarely that, like, people would bury bodies out and be, like, I don't know, naughty like that. But then crossing Albany Highway, it gets okay here.
Yeah, it was very pleasant. So it was just a nice downhill cycle towards the next hut, which is Wollongong Hut. And it was great after like all the undulations over the day and some of the quite tricky descents, to then have just this nice, easy, just don't have to think, don't have to pedal very hard and just keep going. And the hut is actually on a bit of a spur, quite a long spur, in fact. And at the time, the Bibbleman was actually diverted through this way.
Oh, because they had torched
Cuthbert
and
yeah. So, and it's one of those ones where I think if you didn't expect it, you would have been just going, no! Because it was like
21 Ks.
21 Ks instead of 9 Ks.
Yeah.
And when you get to that junction, it would have been like the experience you get to Long Point, where you're like, where is this place?
I've seen a campsite sign, but no, it's like 500 meters away.
Yeah, so the campsite, I think it's designed to be a bit further away, and it's fine if you're on a bike, because that's nothing. It's less than 5 minutes. Whereas on foot, it would have been a longer walk than that. But the campsite's, again, very lovely. I think it's very well appointed, well situated, and they've actually thought about it, because in Carinya, they've got the benches in the front of the hut, which makes sense because it's got a more open sort of approach to the campsite. Whereas here, they've put the seating area and the bike maintenance area in the front of the building, and they've put the seating at the back facing the forest. And I think I like that, even though it's the same hut design, they've thought about the orientation really well. Yeah, so lovely spot. Again, not that far from the main road, which I was quite surprised by. But really good quality campsite that I think I would have been happy to have stayed at.
Was it like a Gringer Creek scenario where you could hear the traffic from Albany Highway, or was it fairly sheltered?
I think it's far enough from Albany Highway that you don't hear that much of it. It's more closer to Jarrahdale. I think in a busier time, and if you it was nighttime, you probably could hear cars passing, but I didn't really hear very much. That would have to be something I guess you have to experience if you were actually camping.
Yeah, because these first two huts you didn't stay at, did you? It was just kind of a stop in.
Yeah.
On your day.
So the first one in particular was before COVID restrictions were lifted, so that I wouldn't have been able to even if I wanted to. And the second one, I think maybe they were lifted, but I'm not sure.
Because Wollongong, where it is, would have been outside of the travel.
Wollongong is within the area, but there's that little section in Glen Eagle, which is just outside by 250 meters. And originally, I wasn't going to do that section until I got the all clear, but the Munda Biddi Foundation said that you could cycle the entire trail from Mundaring through to Nanga.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's the green light.
Yep.
I'm going to do it.
Someone said it's okay.
Someone said it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what's it like heading south from Wollongong? Kind of heads towards Sullivan Rock area.
Yeah, so it crosses Jarrahdale Road, and I feel once you pass Glen Eagle, the forest just gets better and better and better. And it got really good up until Jarrahdale Road, and then it drops off a little bit, but it's still like acceptable looking. And you can see where the Bibbulmun was following the Munda Biddi and then branched off towards Sullivan Rock. And it's interesting because it skirts fairly close. Like if you look at the map, you can see the start of the plantation.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't actually go to Sullivan Rock, and then it sort of takes these back roads through to Jarrahdale via the prisoner of war camp that's there in Balmoral.
It's a very interesting history that doesn't really get talked about.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone knows about how the Japanese were put in internment camps in America, but we don't talk about how we did that to the Italians.
Yeah, I don't recall actually hearing that before I read it today in your post. Like, it's just a weird thing that you'd think either the Italian community would have spoken up about it, or someone, like, it would have been mentioned somewhere in history, but it just... Like, unless you're there and reading the information signs, I don't think many people would know about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's interesting is that you're reading it, and they were talking about how the Italians who were in the camps often wanted to come back, and some of them actually did migrate in the 50s because they really liked the area. And who can blame them? I mean, yes, they're in a prisoner of war camp, but the Jarrah in that area is magnificent. Like, I think that this must have been one of the earliest places logged in the area because the trees have grown back to being almost old growth height. So it's a really nice area for cycling, very pleasant. And then the prisoner of war camp is only like a short few 100-meter walk. That's why I've never written it up, because it just didn't feel worth the effort to just go and do that. But while you're there, you might as well do it.
Because they've recently put in, I know Headley, who's big in the hiking scene in Perth, he's tried to, or he has, with a group of people, gone and maintained the trail that leads to Sullivan Rock.
Oh yeah, the Balmoral track.
Yeah. But then they went and burnt that straight after they finished it, which is not fantastic.
No, it's not. Because that's actually a really cool idea, to create a spur that joins on to Jarrahdale, because Jarrahdale is such a popular trail town in the area. It makes sense, and then it's such a shame that they did that. Yeah.
From Balmoral heading into Jarrahdale, heads the old railway formations that would have carried all the Jarrah logs back to Jarrahdale and then off to Rockingham. This is where you kind of ran into your first bit of cycling trouble. Yeah,
so I was, loving it because it's this narrow trail through stunning forest. What I would call stunning, what DBCA would call high fuel load, I suppose. Really lush and beautiful. And then when I stopped to look at one of those, they have those log loading platforms. So they had one of those in the forest. And as I picked up my bike, I was like, oh, my brake lever's bending the other way. Oh, it's completely snapped off now. I guess one brake's okay. I think I'll be fine. No, I wasn't fine.
Yeah, it was the wrong brake.
It was the wrong brake lever, yes. So it was my rear one, and on pavement, that's okay. You can get away with that. Not on pea gravel. So I came to a bit of a bend in the path when I was supposed to turn to the left, hit the brakes. The rear wheel kept going, spun out of control, grazed my knee, and it scraped on the ground, and then my shoulder went straight into a tree.
Ouch. Was it a Jarrah tree?
Probably. And you're saying good karma.
No, I never like when you get injured, but it is kind of funny when it's a Jarrah tree.
Yep. And after I'd said such nice things too. So that wasn't pleasant, and it took the winds out of my sails for the rest of the day, in a sense, because I was in pain. I normally carry gaffer and some cable ties with my hiking kit, but I didn't have my hiking kit with me, so I had to make do with what I had. And I realized, look, I need to mend this brake lever. So I got a massive bandage and just wrapped it around the brake lever, and you'll see photos on the blog when I post it of my MacGyvered brake lever. I was like, oh yeah, this works. And I dealt with my bloody knee and my shoulder, but certainly it was a painful cycle in. But if I take away the pain elements, it was a nice ride into town. Surprisingly so in some parts, because you come into like this sort of farming area before you actually get into town, but then just before you reach town, it's another lovely pocket of forest. So that was nice to end that, because sometimes days into town are very compromised. But this was actually a really nice day into town.
Because I suppose, like, on a bike, like, sometimes going in and out of a town on foot can last an hour or so, but if you're on a bike, that could be 20 minutes. Where you're going through the compromise section. But I mean, Jarrahdale is one of those towns that it's meant to feel like it's a nature town. It's not cleared that heavily, although there are logging and mining areas right near town. It kind of feels like it's in the forest. Definitely. So one of the things is, I think that the Munda Biddi could do better with signage, like the Bibbulmun, like they have the trailheads in all of the towns. I haven't seen a particularly big, obvious trailhead in any of the towns except for the start in Mundaring. And I feel like those are great things, because it makes people see and go, oh, what is this? And maybe there is one there, but I didn't see it. I'm trying to think for dwelling up, because there's the Bibbulmun track one right outside the visitor centre. I can't recall a Munda Biddi style one there. That's a bit of a missed opportunity for them as well. It is, and I didn't see as many people as I see on the Bibbulmun. I've kind of, like, that's my impression of the Munda Biddi, is it's great that it's there, but not many people ride it end to end. I think the mountain biking scene in Perth is more geared towards your downhill and your weekend day trips on technical trails rather than long distance bike packing. I think that's an interesting thing, because there's two ways of seeing it. Is like, you could see the trail as being an extension of the Bibbulmun, in that it's a long distance trail, but it's just on a bike instead of on foot. And the other side of it is people who are coming from the touring world, where they like ride around Australia, and this would be a good way of doing the southwest corner. So I think that that's an interesting thing, because it's sort of in between the two, but it's not quite either, because a lot of people who do touring don't have mountain bikes, they have road bikes, or like a gravel bike. But this is the first map I've done of the trail, and I really enjoyed it. That's good. It's good to see you like reformed and open to new experiences. Not that you were against mountain biking before, but finding a new niche to explore and enjoy. I think part of why I didn't say anything. So first of all, I didn't say anything because I didn't know if this was something I was going to do, and I didn't want to announce, I'm going to do this, and then go, actually, I hate it. I'm not going to do it. But also, I felt a little bit like it was a betrayal of the hiking community. No, I think like mountain bikers and hikers are fairly like agreeable on most things. It's just a method of getting from A to B that we choose differently in. And like a lot of hikers are mountain bikers, and the other way around as well. So it's not like trail bike riders and mountain bikers where there is a conflict of interest there. Yes, I mean, I certainly have seen bits of the track where dirt bikes have gone through, and it's not pleasant to ride in the ruts that they create. All right, so I guess we'd better start off this Munda Biddi thing with talking about your gear a little bit. As I'm sure people will be intrigued as to know, like, either A, how you converted your hiking gear into bike packing gear, and also what kind of stuff that you do have and have bought specifically for the Munda Biddi.
Sure. So I started this with my 10-year-old mountain bike, which I used for this map, and after the lever snap, I thought it's time to get a new one. Because
one thing breaks and you're like, new bike.
Well, it was two things, because it was my front derailleur isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
Not correctly. I worked to realign it, and it's better, but it's still not perfect, and I have to send it into the shop for that. So it was going to be, the cost of a full bike maintenance, probably an overhaul of the gear system, replace the brake levers, which probably they don't make that model anymore, so I have to replace the whole thing. And then you're just looking at $600. I think my last time I sent a bike in, it was like $400 or $500 for the overhaul.
Jeez, because I've got mine going in on Thursday. I want it to be that.
Yeah. The bike had been very badly maintained at that point. So I thought, look, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'd like to do an upgrade, especially if I'm going to be pushing it for, over 1,000 kilometers. So I bought a new bike, and I had a look at what I wanted. So one of the things I wanted, because of the front derailleur issue, I wanted a 1x10 or 11.
Yeah.
So that means it has one chain ring on the drivetrain, rather than the 2 or 3 that are common on other bikes. So went down to 1, which is, there are pros and cons to that, but it's more mechanically simple, which is what I wanted. And I went with the Polygon Xstrata 6, which I bought online. And the reason for this was what I wanted. This was the cheapest I could get. So I paid $999 for it. And to get comparable with other stuff was probably like $100 or $200 more with another brand. So this is an Indonesian brand, and I've been really happy with the new bike. It's very light, and with that I've also included some bike packing gear, which I wouldn't have had. So at the front I've got a handlebar bag, which is a roll bag. And that clips into, like, there's this thing that kind of hugs the roll, and you roll it in on both sides. And it, people who've hiked will know, like, the Sea to Summit bags, and it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
Except it's got a air valve, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, you showed that to me. I was like, why do not more of these have it? Because I struggle trying to get the air out of my dry sacks, and it takes up a lot of space. So, Sea to Summit, get on that. Yeah,
I don't know why this is not. And I actually would use these bags now for hiking, because I think that's a really good feature. So that's the front one. Then I've got a top tube bag which sits on top, and it looks like some people call it the fuel tank bag, because it looks like where you'd put the fuel if it was a motorbike.
Yeah.
And originally I was using that to put my bike tools. That's something that is a new thing I have to think about.
Yeah.
Is having, like some Allen keys and screwdrivers and stuff. So I've got it was a multi-tool, a bike multi-tool, some tire levers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've now moved those out so that can be a snack pack.
Very important.
Snacks. I put my my batteries for the camera there, and my power bank in that bag.
Yeah.
Then in the frame, I would like to in the future get a frame bag that fits in the whole frame, but to get one that fits the whole frame, like to get a custom one, is really expensive.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've loaded in a cargo carrier. So Blackburn and make this it can carry 5 kilos worth of gear. So it's like an oversized water bottle holder with straps. And I put in there my stove, and then behind it I have what was a water bottle area is now I put all my tools. So it's like a tin that fits in the bottle holder. And I've put 2 water bottle holders onto the handlebar, so they're easy to reach, and also then I don't have the issue of it being in the frame. And then underneath the bike, so I've got some hose clamps, and I've clamped on another of the 5 kilo Blackburn Outpost cargo carriers.
Yeah.
And I carry a bigger bottle of water that carries like backup if I need extra. Which I found I drink a lot more cycling.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot more strenuous on the body.
Yep. And then out the back, I have a seat pack, which is quite a large. This is probably the biggest bag I have. And in there, I keep my sleeping stuff. And so the front has my clothes and I think the medikit and toiletries. And then the back, I've got the bulkier stuff. So if I was doing one where I needed to have a tent, I would probably put the tent in there and you know, other stuff. But at the moment, I'm getting away with just putting the sleeping bag liner, the mat, and and then on top of it, there's an area where you can just tie up a raincoat, which is handy.
Nice.
And I've got my day pack from hiking, which I still use.
Yep.
And that carries very little gear. It just is like my camera. Carries my second lens. Like I've got a better quality lens and a few other things in there. A bit of snacks. And I actually have my camera slung across me as I cycle, so I can take photos as I go.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because obviously you're not going to be taking as many photos because you've got such a long distance in between campsites and towns. I was wondering where your camera was so you could easily just stop and click a photo.
So I'm taking a lot of photos actually, which is probably slowing me down a lot, but you know, I'm not in a rush, and like they're like 45 Ks between campsites, and even when I'm stopping a lot, I'm still getting it done in 5 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a mad rush. So including like, you know, stopping to look at the map because I think that the Munda Biddi is not as well marked as the Bibbulmun. Also, because you're going fast, you can miss turns more easily. So there's you waste a lot of time, more so than I find on the Bib. But I'm finding that the 5 hours to do the Ks is fine. So if you think about that, you've got plenty of time, even in winter.
Yeah, because I mean that's one thing that I've heard people say about doing the Munda Biddi is like you may be able to cycle at 20 to 30 Ks on the road and on pavement, but you really need to take into account you're not going to be traveling 100 plus Ks a day on a bike. It's not possible in the terrain and the surface that you get.
Yeah, I mean you get some lovely bits where you're probably doing like 20 Ks, you know, just careening down the hill, probably faster than 20 Ks.
Yeah. But it's those uphills on not very good trail that's maybe a bit slippery.
Yeah, where you're probably only going 5, you know, so
3 of you pushing your bike.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's fine, you know, in terms of the time. So I'm stopping a lot, but I have the camera around my neck. So for Ningaloo, I bought an underwater case that needed the like a really compact lens, and I was really disappointed because I spent all this money on the lens and the case.
Yeah.
But the lens has actually been really useful because it's much lighter than you've seen the lens that I've been using for the Bibbulmun.
It's long.
Yeah. Whereas this is a nice light lens, and I can just sort of get off, take the photo, and So that's my kit. The water bottles were sort of brought over from the hiking kit, but I've recently just bought the 2 for the handlebar that are specific to this. I've also, I mean, all my clothes are stuff that I had. So I had some like Uniqlo activewear that I wear when I cycle, so not wearing Lycra.
That's disappointing.
My socks are my hiking socks. My shoes were just some sneakers that I have. The down jacket is from hiking. The raincoat's from hiking. So a lot of the clothing is just stuff that I've had. I've not had to buy anything. I did have to buy gloves because I was finding that my hands were getting ripped up.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a little bit more expensive than hiking, but once you got your bike and a few other carry bags, that's pretty much you're set for whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it in terms of the kilometers, you're not spending like that much per kilometer.
Yeah. So I mean, your bike, it's going to be $1 a kilometer just for the bike.
Yeah.
Which is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, because it's like the bib and you've got free accommodation as well. It really makes it quite economical. Especially, I started this at the time my hours at work had been reduced to 80%, so I had Mondays off. So it made sense to make use of my time.
Yeah.
And also, because I was, making less money, I was also concerned, I didn't want to spend a fortune on this.
Yeah.
So, it made sense that this is something that was not too expensive to undertake.
And that's where this will be the first of many posts on the Munda Biddi, and one of our guests that we have lined up, haven't asked yet, has done the Munda Biddi on a very, very tight budget purposefully.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll be getting guests in to talk about the sections, because obviously, like with the Bibbleman, most of them I haven't done.
But I feel like this will be very similar to the Bibbleman. Like, we'll do an episode per map. We'll get guests in to give their thoughts, so it's not just me talking about it. And we for all we know, there might be a Mark's rebuttal episode where you go, "Nah, I disagree with everything Don has ever said."
Potentially. It's not something that I've actively thought about doing, other than if I was going to do an end-to-end of the Bibbleman, I would then tack on an extra 2 to 3 weeks to cycle back on the Munda Biddi. So maybe one day.
Yeah. I have to say, it was something that was on my radar, but for like the far distant future.
Yeah.
But given what was presented to me in April of things to do, it just made sense that this would be what I did this year.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what I can do as a different thing. Maybe like a long distance kayaking trail.
Kayak the Donnelly.
Yeah, have the next big thing. Or I take up dirt bike riding and do like the Gibb River Road or something.
That would actually be cool, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's been episode 1 of our Munda Biddi discussion.
Yep.
I hope everyone's enjoying the change of scenery, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Don's better outlook on the Jarrah Forest.
And I guess a bit of a spoiler, it gets even better.
Wow. No, you showed me the photos earlier, and yes, it does get infinitely better.
Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone for listening to this first episode of the Munda Biddi series. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help for us to reach an audience, and for people who maybe are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general. If you had any questions or any suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com, or you can contact us through our social media channels. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.